This is LA Business Spotlight.
Greed is good.
Always be closing.
It's strictly business.
Welcome to LA Business Spotlight. I'm Joel Metzger. Today we're going to talk about music licensing. The growth of video on the web is explosive, and nearly all of it needs music. So where does all this music come from? Here to talk about that is Bob Frymire, account executive at APM, the world's leading production music library. Thanks for being here, Bob.
Thank you, Joel. It's a pleasure.
Give us a basic understanding of music licensing.
As with any intellectual property, and specifically if you're a composer and you create a body of work, a song, you should protect your works, whether you're a painter or a movie producer or a composer, and you want to copyright your music. Anytime someone wants to use your intellectual property, particularly specifically in music licensing, they need to get a license. They need to get permission to use not just the composition, which is also referred to as the publishing, but the master, which would be the recording of the song. If they don't do that, they're obviously not reimbursing the composer for his intellectual property, and that's not really fair.
Right.
And obviously that's a big debate out there, and the Napster generation really threw the record industry for a loop, and I think that was all part of the internet coming of age and technology advancing.
Yeah, I mean, everything changed, right?
Right. But as I'm sure we'll touch on, there's a lot of intellectual property out there that people may or may not realize that somebody actually created that, whether it was a painting or it was a photo or it was a song.
What exactly does APM do? I mean, it's basically an online library?
APM stands for Associated Production Music, and we were created, actually we're going to celebrate our 30th year here in 2012.
Congratulations.
And we were created by EMI Music, which is one of our parents.
Right.
EMI Music Publishing, because there's EMI Music Publishing and then there's EMI Music, i.e. the record company side of things.
Right.
And they created APM to look after some of the production music libraries that they owned. KPM out of London, England, is one of our core libraries, and that was, I think, the primary library that EMI owned.
Mm-hmm.
And there were others, and we basically were created to represent these music libraries in this territory, in the United States. All of these libraries we represent in the United States and Canada. If you wanted to synchronize any of our music to a production, we can license the rights to do that in these territories only.
By synchronize, you mean use the music in a video, most likely.
Audio or video.
Right. Attach it to whatever you're editing together.
Correct. Yeah, synchronize. You're going to synchronize it with your audio or video. We grant both the sync or the publishing rights, as we've talked about, as well as the master. All of that music is available on our website. Mm-hmm. Anyone can go on our website and they can search and audition the music. Right. You can access it.
I've used it before, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's a huge library, and you can audition these. You're actually able to download these files and drop them into whatever you're working on just to test it out.
Anyone can go on the website as a guest and they can search and audition. Mm-hmm. But you have to be set up as a client with us in order to download the music.
Right.
And there's no cost to download the music. We want you to be able to find the music that works for your production. It doesn't cost anything to become a client. There's no minimum use. One of the nice things that I like about being at APM, and I've been there 11 years or so now, we have over 350,000 tracks of music on the website. Mm-hmm. It's gotten to where we're releasing 80 to 100 CDs a month, a constant flow of new music. Mm-hmm. All of the music costs the same. It just depends on the kind of clearance, which I know we can talk about a little bit. Right. And we have a published rate book. Mm-hmm. I don't make it up. There are things I can do as an account director to kind of make it better, which there's 12 of me, in a sense. There's a number of different account directors in our New York and LA and Toronto offices. We have a studios team, and they work with all the networks and the studios. We have a cable team, as we call them. They work with a lot of the cable, the HBOs, the Comedy Centrals, and so forth. They also work with sports teams and other kinds of companies in that direction. And we have the corporate team, which I'm a part of, and we primarily work with ad agencies, post houses, government agencies, corporations, ministries, nonprofit groups, freelancers,
Wow.
you name it.
Wow. Wow.
Which is kind of nice because I get to work with a wide variety of clients.
Right.
It amazes people sometimes when they think, well, you work with who? Well, the Las Vegas Police Department's one of my clients.
Right.
It comes in handy once in a while, you know. What do they do? What do they need music for? Well, they make training films.
Right.
They make occasional drunk driving films for the
Right.
public. They do things with the local community cable, the community affairs type of informational things that you have in the local municipalities.
Right.
Um,
All the
and
way
they-
up to huge studios, right? I mean,
well, I don't know. They have huge studios.
no,
They
I
have
mean,
some-
everything from a small police department to
Oh, yes, yes.
I mean, everybody. You
Right.
have all kinds of different clients.
Right. One of the interesting things about the Las Vegas Police Department, and I also work with the Toronto Police Department for that matter, but they've started taking footage from security cameras of robberies. They know people came into Las Vegas and were making robberies and going out of the city, going back home. So they would take the security footage, they'd dress it up, put some music to it, and they were using YouTube and other social medias. Have you seen this man kind of
Right.
guy?
That's really
kind
smart.
of production, and they were actually getting response and results,
That's really smart.
which is another example of the way things have been evolving with the internet.
Right.
But I also work with Northrop Grumman.
Mhm.
These guys make fighter planes. They took me on a tour, you know.
So they want to play the Top Gun soundtrack while they're flying
Yeah.
around. Or
Well, again, most of what they're doing is internal communications.
Mm-hmm.
Very large company. Their offices are all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
I work with the LDS Church. I had the guy give me a tour of the tabernacle, and I was on the stage where they broadcast every Sunday morning and that kind of thing.
wow.
Yeah, I mean, fascinating, let alone the ad agencies
Right.
and documentary people making a film on fly fishing in the Andes.
Right.
And wow, you know.
And so when these different clients come to APM, you have people that can actually help them who kind of have the whole library up in their head and will actually suggest tracks and make suggestions for them and help them find what they need.
Right. We have music directors on staff in New York and LA, and all they do is help our clients find music. There's no cost for our clients. They really are the secret weapon. They're very knowledgeable. A couple of them, Edwina and Georgia, have been there, I think, 29, 30 years now.
I know Edwina.
And and I know you know from doing music searches that they have this stuff on the top of their head.
Yeah,
They-
and it's a huge factor because it is so time consuming to listen to tracks. It's so different from glancing at a page full of thumbnails and the right image will pop out at you right away. But music you have to listen to one at a time and it takes forever. So having someone who knows where everything is and can make a dozen suggestions if you're looking for a certain thing, it's a great advantage that you guys have.
with 350,000 tracks, the site is designed to be easy to search, but you definitely can save time, be steps ahead with their help. And one of the nice tools on the site is that they can email you a link. And it's just a regular email. You don't have to go through a firewall. You don't have to download anything. You open up that link, you click on it. It takes you right into the website where the music is. And whatever they've suggested is going to be right in front of you. So, I mean, you've seen that.
Yeah,
Joel,
yeah,
so.
it's a great thing, and the fact that once you do become a client or open an account or whatever it is, even though it doesn't cost anything, you are able to download 4 or 5 different files to see which one actually works in your video production or whatever you're working on, because it's really hard to know until you actually sync the two together.
Right.
What's going to work? And a lot of these sites you go to, they have they'll have this voice that pops in every 5 seconds as sample, and you can't use it. They want you to buy it before you can actually
Right.
drop
Some
it in.
libraries do that. Most files these days are encoded, encrypted, whatever you want to call it. They're fingerprinted, which maybe I should go back a little bit about where does the music come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. Where does it come from? Do composers send you things? Do you hire musicians to do original music? I mean, obviously you buy out other libraries on occasion, but where does it come from?
Our composers are some of the finest composers in the world. There's some of the finest studios in the world, Abbey Road. I mean, some of the finest orchestras and the finest musicians in the world.
Right.
And what is the difference between a composer and an artist? Well, maybe the artist is out gigging,
Right.
playing on the road once in a while.
One makes more money than the other, perhaps.
Well, some of the artists that have been successful that don't want to tour anymore, they're still composing.
Right.
Whether it's for, film or even for production libraries. So the composers, and we have 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 of them now, this is where the music comes from. It's the constant flow.
So if someone needs a track and that you have something that's about halfway there and they would like a stronger drum track or something on it, you can have someone sweeten it up or just start from scratch and say, we need this type of song. Can your guys make it?
There are different things that we can do. This January, beginning 2012, we formally launched our custom music division. We have a vice president of custom music that came on board, Steven Stern. Steven worked with Hans Zimmer for 8 years.
Sure.
And he's very good. We have a studio over in West Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And even though we've been doing custom music for 8 years, we just now have an official department, so to speak, and we're kind of out front about that. We've done custom music for Apple. We did some of the original ringtones to the iPhone.
Oh, wow.
My biggest account is Motorola.
Mm-hmm.
They use our music embedded in their phones as ringtones.
Wow.
And we've had this deal with them again for 8 or 9 years. And at this point, more than half of what we're doing with them is custom music for their phones and their audio branding, if you will.
Right.
And we've done music for ESPN, EA Games.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously video games is a big industry, and we've done a lot there, as well as movies, things like that.
Right.
So it's really pretty broad, but that's we are composers.
Right.
If you came to me with a track from one of the libraries and said, boy, this is close, this is really good, but I don't want that glockenspiel in there.
Well, who wants a glockenspiel anyway?
What I can do is I would contact the library and find out if they had the stems or the mixes from the recording session. Now, if it's a really old track, it's doubtful.
Right.
But pretty much everything the last 4 or 5 years, they have it digitally available. They can post the stems to an FTP site. Mm-hmm. You can access it, take that glockenspiel out.
Right.
You want to put a drum track in, as you mentioned earlier? Well, with the understanding that you're not going to create a new song, you're not going to copyright it as a new song, you're not going to sell it as a new song, we would just simply look at you putting a drum roll, so to speak, over one of our songs as synchronization.
Right. Well, I want to go to break, and when we come back, I want to talk about detection software and how you guys do get paid. This is Joel Metzger with LA Business Spotlight.
LA Business Spotlight is brought to you by Icebox Logic, makers of fine handcrafted audio and video. Go to iceboxlogic.net to see examples. Your company needs to communicate.
We are back with LA Business Spotlight. I'm Joel Metzger. Let's talk about detection software. I know on YouTube I've uploaded videos of, say, my dog running on the beach, and I'll throw some music under it from my iTunes library, and the next thing you know, I have a warning from YouTube saying, you're using this particular track, or sometimes they even make it unavailable, and it takes about 10 seconds for that to happen. It's amazing. So what's going on with that sort of detection software?
Well, YouTube is a very good example because they were one of the first websites out there that people could do that. And at first, again, going back to the Napster generation, where somebody felt they could get something off the internet and just stick it on that video of your dog, for example, and put it on the internet, no problem, right? Yet it's intellectual property, and they didn't get permission. They didn't license that song, or they didn't license that footage, what have you. And one of the first websites that really kind of felt the wrath of the legal system from the intellectual property owners, if you will, was YouTube. And it's been in litigation for a long, long time, more than 10 years, easily. And your example of taking a song, a Rolling Stones song.
Right.
And your dogs can't get no satisfaction down on the beach.
It was Harry Belafonte, to be specific, but
okay.
that's...
Well, difference, but nonetheless, the argument was that it wasn't your song, you can't put it in the video. And YouTube said, well, we didn't do that. You did that, Joel.
Right.
And the lawyers said, well, no, you're providing the ability for them to do that, so you have to be responsible for that. So what's
and the
come
court's still
about?
out on that, or
Well, it's coming around.
Uh-huh.
It's coming around, and there's other elements that have come into the discussion too. But what has developed in the last 10 years or so are companies that develop software that are detection services.
Right.
It's been around for a long time, 20 years or more in radio. And it's fairly simple when you think about it. If we have 350,000 songs and I give you the metadata that's imprinted in all of those files into your detection software, you then can detect when my music's being played anywhere.
the metadata is within the actual sonic signature of the song?
Essentially.
Okay.
Yeah. And
It's a fingerprint of the song.
correct. Now, it's not just the music. Stock footage. Getty Images is
Right.
one of the largest providers of stock footage. You want a picture of Pearl Harbor, or you want a picture of Franklin Roosevelt, or the Twin Towers burning, or
Right.
some such thing. A lot of that is licensed footage,
Right.
and has to be licensed in the same way. And they've given their metadata, so to speak, to these detection software companies so they can detect when certain intellectual properties are being used.
Right.
The record labels are obviously imprinting as well, so they can tell if there's an artist being played, right? And YouTube in specific, people have their own channels.
Right.
And I'll take it from a business point of view. I'm a tractor company. I make tractors, and I've got a page on YouTube because I like to promote my tractors, and I want my distributors to have a portal and so forth.
Right.
And I've used some images and some music and a video. I licensed it. I put the video on my channel, and I get a pop-up from YouTube saying this is intellectual property and needs to be licensed.
Right.
Well, I'm a tractor company. I'm not really fluent with the entertainment
Right.
world, and I'm kind of freaked out because I thought I did license it.
Right.
Well, you did. They just detected the metadata. They don't know whether you licensed it or not.
Right.
We don't necessarily share that. That's confidential.
Okay.
There are detection. I mean, we can match up, and I'll elaborate on that in a minute to find out if, in fact, that is licensed. I'm sure there's probably 500,000 videos out on YouTube right now with our music in it that has not been
You
licensed.
just don't know.
Because of these detection services and the ability to do this, the performing rights societies, which have had a big say in a lot of the discussion over the last many, many years with intellectual property being utilized on the internet, they've been using these detection services to determine when their composers' music, remember the performing rights societies, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC,
Right.
represent the composers, and they collect royalties for performance.
Right.
When music is in a TV show or a radio commercial or so forth, the broadcaster pays that. Okay?
Right.
That radio station also happens to now be on the internet.
Right.
Well, the Performing Rights Society want them to pay performance for the internet too. It's a new medium.
Right. Sure.
Well, they don't necessarily see it that way. We're already paying performance for broadcast.
Right.
So, there's something going on in that part of that whole discussion where things are coming around.
Right.
So ASCAP, BMI, and so forth are able to use these detection services to determine music being played on the internet and use that, in a sense, as leverage to collect performance royalties.
Right.
Are radio stations having to pay for internet as well as broadcast? I believe that's still under discussion.
Right.
It'll probably end up coming halfway down the middle somewhere.
It's kind of like everybody wants to take advantage of the increased exposure, but not everybody wants to pay the piper.
Right. And I think you can understand both sides. The radio station's already paying to play it over the radio. They don't want to have to pay again to play it over a different medium.
Right.
But the composer wants to get paid because they're getting played over a different medium.
You could say they're double dipping if you're
So to speak,
if you're on
yeah.
that side of it.
Yeah. So that continues to develop. I'm not completely up on all of that.
Right.
but they're using these detection services to help do that. Now, if you took something tangible, not just YouTube, but let's say you've got maybe it's a theme park, and the theme park has to have a performance license from ASCAP and BMI in order to play music in the park, any music.
Sure.
Because all of the composers, whether it's Harry Belafonte or the Rolling Stones, or a composer who's writing for a production library, is affiliated with one of these performing rights societies. So that theme park has a blanket. Well, they know they also have a website.
Right.
So they're trying to ask them to give them a little more money each year to include the website.
Right.
Because that's a tangible kind of a target that I think the performing rights are going to go after.
Sure.
And I think on businesses, there's a limit. Same thing with a restaurant,
Right.
Or a retail store. When you go into those stores or restaurants and the music's playing, they have a performance license that allows them to play the music.
Right.
But on their website, you probably don't hear music.
Mm-hmm.
Not that necessarily you might want to, but some of them might want to have music once in a while. Right?
Yeah.
So again, where's the Performing Rights Society going to try and get money out of that department store website? Or
obviously those societies
worth it?
and the creators, they all want to get paid
Right.
as much as possible for every use of it, and the people who want to take advantage of it, it's in their interest not to have to pay every single time it's being used on every single platform.
Right.
So
and with the development of technology and these detection services, 10 years ago they were one thing. Now there's something else. In another 5 years, there'll be something else.
Right.
Obviously, technology is leaps and bounds, and I think everybody who has a computer knows that every few months I have to get a new computer or
Right.
I have to get a new phone because it gets outdated.
Right.
Technology is moving that fast, and you can only imagine where we're going to be in 10 or 20 years.
And it's amazing. We get facial recognition,
Right.
all these things. It's all kind of the similar stuff. They can track you.
Right.
Well, it seems to me the internet is just exploding with video. What do you see coming up in the future as far as all this video content is going to need music? It seems to me. So, do things seem rosy for APM in the future?
Well, yeah. Who was saying it? That video is king. Content is king.
Right.
And all that.
Right.
And yes, the internet is exploding. It has been, and I think it's going to continue to. 5 years ago, you go to an ad agency and they had their broadcast department and their print department, and they had maybe some new department with interactive or
I remember the word interactive. Yeah.
that we're starting to develop. And here, 5-10 years down the road, they're one and the same.
Right.
If they're developing a TV commercial, they're going to include the internet when they put that out. When I license a song, in fact, most of the TV clearances include the internet for that reason.
Right.
Obviously, marketers want to get the bang for the buck.
Right.
It gives you greater latitude. And even people with their video of their dog on the beach.
Right.
It's social media, Facebook, and all these things that are, it's fun to have your friend jumping off a rock into the river and,
Right.
all those things that people are able to do with a phone.
Right, I
or
know.
a pad.
Yeah.
And all this technology that's
We've all become
evolving.
broadcasters.
Yeah.
Every person on this planet has become some kind of broadcaster.
It's in the palm of our hand.
Well, it seems like your company's in a good situation because people are going to keep putting out content probably faster than ever, and they're going to need music to go with it. So.
And it's becoming more realistic too.
Mm-hmm.
8 years ago, the cost to put something in a video that was going to go on the internet, they might have been basing it on page views, or maybe it was a sub page.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, even advertising, they don't do that anymore. It's on the internet.
Right.
Once it's on there, it essentially is going to live there
forever.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So the clearances have to kind of allow that, and so do the costs.
Right.
We recently updated our rate book, and a majority of the rates actually came down in line with the reality.
Right.
Yes, something on the internet can be viewed by the world. That's a lot of exposure. We should charge more money. Well,
Right.
wait a minute. that's a video on Steve's muffler shop in
Right,
Omaha.
right.
He's not doing internet business like Amazon.com is.
Right. Just because it's the potential to be seen by the world doesn't mean it is going to be seen by the world.
Right.
But then
Right.
again, you get these dancing cat videos with 200 million views, and who knew that was going to happen either? It's a really interesting time we're living in.
Right.
Well, Bob, thank you so much for coming in.
Well, thanks
Tell
for having
people
me.
again about the website and what the URL is and how they get started if they're looking for music.
Well, www.apmmusic.com, 2 M's there,
Okay.
is our homepage. There's a lot of information there about the libraries that we have, our composers. In fact, the composers are featured monthly, and different stories about where our music's being used. Our music's in the new Batman movie. I mean, it's everywhere, not just APM music, but when you think about it, music's everywhere now.
Yeah.
The website's very cool. We link to a lot of people through social media, like every company these days. And in the upper right corner on our website, you'll see an area where you can launch My APM. My APM is the meat and potatoes, as I like to call it. That's where all the music is.
Huh.
And anybody can go in as a guest and search and audition and see what's there.
Okay.
And if they're interested on that site, they can reach out and contact our account services group or any of us, and we'd be happy to talk to them.
Well, that's great. Bob Frymire, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, Joel.
You've been listening to LA Business Spotlight. If you have a company or service and you'd like to appear on the show, send an email to info@iceboxlogic.net.
This podcast was recorded at the studios of Icebox Logic.